Welcome to our regularly scheduled City Council meeting on February 12th, 2026. We will note that two council members, Councilmember Orbach and Councilmember Clark, had scheduling conflicts this evening, so they won't be in attendance. You have three other great people up here. May we have a roll call?
Councilmember Westman.
Here.
Vice Mayor Jensen.
Here.
And Mayor Morgan.
Here. Would you all please join in the Pledge of Allegiance? Any additions or deletions?
Staff has no changes to the agenda this evening.
Great. And we have a presentation this evening for the acceptance of the funds for the Treasure Cove Playground at Jade Street Park by the Friends of Santa Cruz County Parks. Come on up. Yeah. Do you have any words you want to say or anything?
Good evening. My name is Tricia Wiltshire, and I'm the campaign manager for County Park Friends. Mariah Roberts, executive director, sends her regards. She's also had a schedule conflict today. And I am here with my colleagues, some of who would like to say a few things. We have Leslie Harris, our board chair. We have Brenda Gutierrez Baeza, our community lead. And we also have Dan Havley, who will be saying a few things, and my son, Oliver Potts, who gets dragged along just because he likes coming to the council meetings. Anyway, what we would love is just a brief time to take a quick photo with you, because one of the things that we really appreciate is being able to document milestones. And certainly for the community that raised so much money for this project, we just wanted to make sure that we had it right in front and center in a big check. So we'll take the photo, and then my colleague Dan will have a few closing remarks.
Great. Yeah, whoever wants to be in it, we can meet you up in front. Oliver.
I just have to say one final comment with Oliver and Brenda. These two were the driving force behind Leo's Haven. Oliver just wanted to play with his sisters, and Brenda wanted to be able to chase her nieces and nephews around on a playground. And I'm happy to say that Brenda is now an aunt.
Good evening. My name is Leslie Harris, and I'm board chair for County Park Friends. And I'd like to say thank you for trusting us and working with us. It's as part of the board, it's so wonderful to see something this big and this impactful come to fruition. It really makes it all worth it. So thank you.
Again, I just want to say that the outcome of all this will be squeals of joy, huge smiles on the faces of children who have been left out of traditional playgrounds. And that's thanks to the City of Capitola, Community Development Block Grant, as well as city staff, County Park Friends, and 1,500 donors. So thank you for making this happen.
Okay, go do your homework. We'll take it. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Great job. All right, additional materials.
None.
Shocking. Okay, great. This will be item 5, oral communications by members of the public. You'll have 3 minutes to speak on anything that is not agendized this evening. Come on up.
Hello, council members. My name is Cosette, and I'm 16 years old. I'm a junior at Harbor High. For the last 2 years, I've been a junior leader for Camp Capitola during the summer. I was just informed that the age requirement is 18, and they will not take individual candidates into consideration if they have not met this age requirement. I'm asking the council if they would consider lowering the age requirements for people like myself who will be 17 this summer and have demonstrated strong leadership skills, responsibility, a passion to work with children, and former work experience in the camp. I think some exceptions should be made for people who have been volunteering their time for years like myself. I hope you might consider this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Goran Kapic. I'm former security guard of Zeltos on the beach. I did security with my black brother George at the front door for a while. At the moment, I'm involved in some court appearances where I will not spare people to mention certain deputies and officers who I suspect of methamphetamine trafficking on the streets, local streets here in the county. As you know, there is a department called the DEA, Department of Enforcement for Drug Distribution, by the way. So it will get complicated because I was picked up in the parking lot of Aptos library by sheriff's deputies, and I'm still wondering today what happened. I will pursue legal action against certain deputies in the next near future. There were not Capitola police officers involved in this nonsense, but I'm trying to reach Kilroy. Kilroy was a damn fine captain, and he knew exactly what VFW stands for, Veterans of Foreign War. I volunteered for this organization for a while. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Welcome.
Yeah, I think it's recording, whatever. Yeah, my name is James Ewan Whitman. It's nice to be here. I haven't been here for a while. So I realize we all pretty much have free rein to say almost whatever we want at the public comments. Although I do want to talk about an item on the consent agenda, and if my phone works, it's not being my friend. So on the consent agenda, which is number 7, easy with glasses. Number B, Fifth Amendment to Library Joint Powers Agreement. Recommended action, authorize the city manager to execute the Fifth Amendment to the Joint Powers Agreement for library services between the City of Santa Cruz, the County of Santa Cruz, and the cities of Capitola and Scotts Valley, extending the term effective January 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2032. So I really wanted to bring this up in the City of Santa Cruz on Tuesday, but I got there about 14 minutes late and they were done with public comments. So it brought me in to speak publicly almost 7 years ago, or why are we allowing military frequency weapons in civilian locations? And it still really is the biggest elephant in the room, even with the previous speaker. I mean, it's not just the vaccine, it's all the alien frequencies that, since radio was invented in the telegraph in the 1870s, we've been greatly affected by that. But the reason I'm coming to talk is taking 18 units at Cabrillo, and their computer software attacks me all the time. So I was taking care of some business. I was doing some work on my phone. And when I came into the computer lab, I realized one of my phones was at 1%. I'm like, wow, I'm just going to plug into the computer the back of the computer right in front of me. So I plugged into the USB, and I plugged into my phone, and it said it was charging. I ignored it. I just said, that's great. So I proceeded to just do some homework for 45 minutes. And I realized during that time that I was feeling these severe heart palpitations. And it's not that it's that easy to feel my pulse in my throat right now, but I still can. And my vision was being affected. And I'm like, wow, I'm being attacked by frequencies again. And here I am, a 59-year-old man that's fairly knowledgeable about the weapons capabilities of these things. And I'm being attacked. And so I don't know if it was just the phone or it was the fact that I was using their computer, because I usually just use my phones, but when I unplugged my phone after 45 minutes, it still said it only had a 1% charge. I'm like, what's the point of that stuff? So we're all in this together, and I was late on Tuesday. I didn't get to make comments on public comments, but I did pull a couple items off the consent agenda. And I think the only individual in the room that was actually smiling at what I said was the new city attorney in Santa Cruz. Because, I mean, I don't believe a word I say, do your own research. But I decided that I would do code compliance, and that was my first experience with the city and county attorneys, and we had a lot of fun, and she remembered that fun from 10 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Leslie Nielsen. Good evening, Mayor and Vice Mayor and Councilmember Westman. I'm actually just here for a quick shout out to Public Works tonight. I had so much fun today watching the tractor on the beach. And I have to say, I'm working on a coastal development permit on behalf of my neighbors to improve our revetment there on Cliff Drive. And I found out I had to get a permit to do the test work to get the permit. And then once you got that permit, you had to get a permit to access the beach to do the work that you got. There's just like this thing going on. And I'm not actually here to complain about that. It's just how it works. And if you just sort of plod through it, it gets done. And it gets done when you can collaborate with people. And I'm just going to say that Kailash in the Public Works Department was so helpful and just said, yeah, I think it'd be better if you did this. Why don't you do that and then let us know? And each time we got to a spot where something happened, there wasn't a lot of delay. Things just happened. And we got some really good data down there today because the storm washed the sand out. And we dug some test permits and found out where all the bedrock was. And we're happy to share that data with the city if they need it for what they're going to be doing on the Cliff Drive project. And then Kailash said, yeah, we've got even more data from when we hammered pilings into the wharf. And we'll get you that. And they got it to our coastal engineer. So there was just this great sense of collaboration on sharing data with our project and the city. And I just wanted to thank them for that and point that out so we can celebrate those wins. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Thank you for the time. My name is Brian Shields. I'm a field rep with Carpenters Local 646. Sorry, I feel like I'm slurring my speech. I'm a little tired today. But I don't know the last time somebody came out here and just gave public comment, introduced the Carpenters Union to you guys. I'm the senior organizer, so I cover Santa Cruz County, Monterey County, San Benito County. And we look forward to working with the city of Capitola and being hopefully more of a fixture here in chambers and actually bringing stuff forward. One of the things that I would like to highlight, this isn't about Capitola, this is just construction in general, is it's kind of the Wild West because there really isn't anybody looking. There's all kinds of laws on the books. There's Wage Order 16. You look at the DIR, DOL, NLRA, you could read for the rest of your life. And but there's really not much that ends up enforcing those. There's no people that end up enforcing those. Like the DIR that I'm in contact with, there's only 2 people that cover public works, right? So this isn't a shot at Capitola Public Works, just in general, okay? There's only 2 people between here and Sacramento that cover that, and there is a lot of public works in between here and there. So we end up doing a lot of compliance work, trying to make sure that folks are being paid correctly on these job sites, and just to introduce a little bit of what we do, you know? We do look forward to having a relationship and that not just being one way, and supporting Capitola too as it moves forward and grows. So thank you for your time. I'll reach out. Appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Any other public comments? Welcome.
There's only 3 of you tonight. Hello, the 3 of you. So we hear a lot about 5G, and I was looking through notes I had of a documentary, a DVD I saw, and it's called 5G Apocalypse, the Extinction Event. And the opening words are, it's important to understand what the 5G is doing and what they say it's doing. We're told on the IEEE, the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, beamforming document, that this technology cooks your eyes like eggs in World War II. We all need to understand these are military weapons. These are assault frequencies. If you garner nothing more than that, that's what you need to know. It's microwave radiation warfare. That's what this is. So the documentary is called 5G Apocalypse, the Extinction Event. In addition, there are liability issues with this technology and fires from cell towers, etc. Crown Castle and Verizon, according to its 2014 SEC filings, does not have liability insurance for health effects. If residents sue for radiation-caused illnesses due to 4G, 5G small cell towers in their public right-of-way, counties and cities will be left defenseless. Liability will fall on them. Last night, I was at a Pajaro Valley School Board meeting, and I taught in Pajaro Valley the last 20 years of my career. And they approved a cell tower, cancer-causing cell tower, on the Aptos High School campus without any disclosure of the documented adverse effects. I heard the phrase concealment fraud, and I thought that's very interesting. Concealment fraud, I felt that's what it is. And by entering agreements with telecom corporations, you are mandating anyone who does this.
Thank you.
And intensification of radiation destruction. We really need to stop this assault. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment this evening? All right, seeing none, I'll take it to any staff comments. Looks like we have some.
We have a couple.
Great.
First, I just wanted to announce we had the first session in Discover Capitola, our Leadership Academy last night. We had about 30 attendees. Just want to do a shout out to my staff, Chloe, Jessica, Jim, our city attorney, Mark Tran. And yeah, everybody did a great job last night. Got a lot of kudos and good feedback. So it's fun event, and it was a good kickoff.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I also wanted to announce that on February 23rd at 5:30 p.m., the City Council is going to have a special meeting, and it'll be focused on the mall zoning efforts. We plan to bring the full document to the City Council. We'll have a thorough presentation for you that evening with the first reading proposed. We've posted this on our website. We'll be publishing it in the newsletter tomorrow. We're trying to get the word out as much as possible. So with that, it'll be Monday night, February 23rd at 5:30 p.m. in City Council chambers. Also, I wanted to announce that we extended an offer to a building official who's accepted our offer, and you'll be meeting a new building official in March. So great news for our department. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Any other staff? All right, I'll take it up here. Do you have any comments?
Just a couple real quick ones. I keep getting asked about the Stockton Avenue Bridge and where we are on that. And I was wondering if you could just verbally comment on that, not tonight, but at our next council meeting, so people can hear from staff where we are on what our timing is on that. And the only other thing I was going to say is I did not go to the EMBAG meeting last night because it got canceled.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Let's see, a couple things. I had an RTC meeting. We had a regular course of business, but we did take action to give direction to the RTC staff and legal team to terminate the contract with Progressive Rail. And so we'll be moving through that process. Let's see, the next thing is I just wanted to give a shout out and thank our planning commission. I watched the last meeting. I've watched many of them. They have had a huge task in front of them with the director, with direction from Katie and her staff, but I know they put in a lot of hours, a lot of time, a lot of research and everything. I just wanted to give them a shout out for all their hard work and what they did to move it along to the next step is, to us that we're going to see. Let's see, so just a couple of dates that are important coming up. Sip and Stroll is coming up on Saturday, February 21st from 12 to 5. Also, there is CWEP is doing a bronze element dedication ceremony on Sunday, the 22nd at 2 o'clock, where they're going to have kids come out and trace the bronze elements in the wharf and just be just a fun community event and having the kids learn a little bit about the nature that's going on and the amazing things going on out there. And then also on February 26th at 4 o'clock, there is going to be a ribbon cutting for the new Capitola Avenue overpass. And I think the RTC sent out a press release this afternoon. And so hopefully we come out and celebrate that, connecting back SoCal back to Capitola and vice versa, and also having another path to travel getting out of the community. And then just one last follow-up just to our guest speaker that spoke tonight. Maybe if there could be follow-up from staff or something about the junior guard program and the age requirements and stuff like that, and some further conversation with that. I just appreciate you coming out tonight and speaking, and I hope that we can respond back to you in a certain fashion and hopefully resolve your question and provide some information. And that's all I have, and thank you.
Great. Yes, I want to thank you, Vice Mayor, for your work with the RTC to get that bridge open. I know a lot of people are very excited about that. Other great things within sort of that area of town, the safety flags have been installed at the Bay Hill intersection along with the Bay and Capitola intersection. This was a partnership with the Bay Avenue Senior Apartments. They got a community grant fund and they were able to work with our public works and get the safety flags for crossing the crosswalk. So I think it's a nice enhancement and something that can be utilized. So hopefully people feel a little safer. On that note as well, our new RRFB crosswalk has been installed, otherwise known as the blinky lights, on our other side of Stockton Bridge over by Wharf Road. So thank you again, Director Khan, for getting my mission complete. And I think we're just working towards safety, and that's what I'm excited about. Lastly, last week, our city manager's office got word from our Congressman Panetta's office that we've been awarded $250,000 towards the work that we will eventually be doing down the Bay Avenue corridor. This is also coupled with $500,000 that's been given to us through the RTC. So we have a total of $750,000, and it's a good place to start. I want to thank our congressman. He shows up for Capitola frequently, so I want to give a shout out to that. Yeah, so some good things happening for our great city. And that's it for me. So we'll move on to consent. Item 7. Any of these items can be pulled, or they can all be enacted in one motion.
I don't want to pull an item. I just wanted to make a comment about item C.
Go ahead.
Because I had asked that this come back, and my main goal really is to make certain that any policies we have that affect the public are easily available to them so they can read them and find out what's on them. And if they're changed, they'll be able to see the new one go up, and there'll be some sort of note indicating that, this policy was changed April of this year or December, whenever they are. So I'm looking forward to seeing that be part of our new website so that everyone in Capitola can have access to all our administrative policies. Thank you.
That's great.
With that, I'll make a motion to, oh, did I cut Jerry?
No, you nailed it.
Sorry. With that, I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar items A through D.
I'll second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimous. We'll move on to general government. We've got item 8A, our 41st Avenue pavement rehabilitation and multimodal improvements. Again, something I think everybody's really excited about. Welcome, Director Khan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I have an update for you on a project that I believe we last spoke about in April. Next slide, please. So the 41st Avenue multimodal project is a project on 41st. Obviously, 41st is one of our main arterials through town. It serves neighborhoods, businesses, and then most importantly, the highway. It is identified in our pavement maintenance program, our 5-year rolling program for heavy rehabilitation. Anyone who's been in the intersection of Gross Road will know that. And it has been also targeted for safety improvements for both pedestrians and bicycle travel. We've gotten a significant amount of funding for this project. In the last RTIP with the RTC, about $1 million. Last September before last, Council approved a contract with Kimley Horn for the design and permitting on this project. A significant amount of this project is within the Caltrans right-of-way, and so it requires multiple permits, and it took a full year to get those permits. Those permits are now complete, including the encroachment permit that we need from Caltrans, and so we are ready to bid, which is what this item is about this evening. So the project limits are from Clare Street up to the city limits, which is right on the other side of the freeway overpass, again, much of which is in the Caltrans right-of-way. It is critical connection to the southbound ramp. As you likely know, we back up all the way to Clare's to get onto southbound 1 pretty much every day. This is primarily a pavement project because it's so deteriorated, but again, there are some safety enhancements looped in there, which I will talk about in more detail. So again, pavement, not great in this area. The striping is quite faded, and there are quite a few bicycle conflicts going across the highway here. Though it really isn't the most ideal way to get across town on a bicycle, many people do. There's shopping and residences on both sides of the highway, so we want to make that as safe as possible in the confines that we have on the overpass. So the objectives was to restore the pavement integrity, improve that multimodal access, to clarify some of the guidance onto the highway. Oftentimes, if you're not familiar with the area, you may be in the wrong lane trying to get onto northbound or southbound Highway 1 off of both 41st and off of Gross Road. And then to minimize our construction disruption. So this, again, is one of our main arterials through town. Most of this work will be night work, so to not make a congested area all that more congested. And then also to remain compatible with our future corridor plans. The Community and Economic Development Department, as you know, is still working on their 41st long-term corridor plan. So we're not suggesting any hardscape improvements here as to not create something and then tear it out in the near future. The treatment we're going to do on the street here is partial depth recycling, which is a fancy way of picking up the first few inches of the street, crumbling it up with a stabilizer, putting it back down, and then putting a layer of pavement over it. So it's more than just a mill and fill or just an overlay. It's really stabilizing that pavement surface, which is really important on an arterial of that size. Then also ADA curb ramp upgrades, and then refreshing our striping. Next slide. So the particular improvements for bicycles and pedestrians is enhancing that green conflict striping through the intersections. There is some green conflict striping there now, but to enhance that to our current standards, to add a leading pedestrian interval. So that's when you press the crosswalk button, the crossing comes up before the light turns green. So in theory, you're partway in the intersection prior to anyone potentially turning into the intersection, so you're more visible. and then some separated bikeway protection, which is really highly regulated by Caltrans. All of these items are regulated by Caltrans, and we had to work within their confines, but we were able to add in some separated bikeways, and I have some pictures of what that looks like on the next slide. So this is smaller than we usually have our presentations up here. But this, if you are looking at the top left, that is Gross Road. And then on the bottom is into the Auto Plaza Parkway. So we have that green conflict striping across the intersections in this side. And then where the little black dots are on the lower end of the corner is that separated bikeway. So that is contrasting to the black pavement. It has a yellow base. So if you're familiar with the project the county recently did on SoCal, those are individual kind of pylons. These have a curb that they're all connected to. So we do anticipate these being hit. It's something in the street. People hit things all the time. But if they get hit, the curb's still there and they're easily replaceable. We've also learned from that project that the height of these need to be a certain height as not to kind of infringe onto the bike lane. So we've got a lot of lessons learned from the county project for our project. Next slide, please. And this, these delineators go all the way over the overpass. An added benefit to these delineators is if you get off on if you're moving southbound on Highway 1, getting off on 41st, right now you can cross the freeway and get back on southbound 1. And with the recent highway improvements with the auxiliary lanes, a lot of people are choosing to do that. This is going to prevent you from making those movements unless you want to run over our new curbs, which people will. Just full transparency, but many, many people won't. It will deter most. Next slide, please. As for wayfinding, there will be both pavement markings and overhead signage. So pavement markings, like often you see on the highway, where it'll say Highway 1 and then north or southbound, depending on what lane you're in. And then when your cars are over the signage, which will be frequent, we also have overhead signage at each of the intersections. Next slide, please. So this is depicted here. This is going across Gross Road, Auto Plaza. And so you see the striping on between Claire's and Gross Road as you approach the intersection, and then also that signage at the intersection. Next slide, please. Similarly, this is the Gross Road, where you have, that's often where the lane selection is more challenging for people. And so you have the overhead sign, and then again, the signage on the roadway. Next slide, please. So again, this is going to be primarily nighttime work. We intend on maintaining business access the whole time, even during the night times. There's a lot of driveways on this road, and so we will be noticing them, and they will have access in and out of their businesses and residences during the duration of the project. And then, of course, we'll be coordinating with Caltrans for regional traffic impacts because there are still highway projects going on. Next slide, please. So the total project budget in this fiscal year is a little over $2 million, which consists of the RTC grant and then our local roadway funds, Measure D and SB1. We've expended about $350,000 of that so far on permitting and pre-construction potholing. And so we have about $1.7 million left in the budget for this project. The engineer's estimate for this project is about 1.6 to 2.1. So if we go on to the next slide, we'll be bidding this project with a base bid and an ad alternate. So the base bid, which is what we intend on awarding as our top priority, is the area in the Caltrans right away. So that's Gross Road up until the city limits. That's the part where we got the big development permit for. That is the part of the roadway that is in the worst condition, and that for sure we have enough funding for. The ad alternative would be between Gross Road and Clare Street. And the reason that you bid something this way is so you have all of that costing, but you do know you have something to award. If we were to bid the whole project as a whole and then only wanted to award part of it, we wouldn't be able to do that. We'd have to bid it all over again. So that's why we're breaking it into two pieces. Hopefully we get good prices back and we're able to award the whole thing. But if we are not, we definitely can do the top half of the project. Next slide, please. And so the recommended action is up there on the screen for you, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much.
I just have a couple of real quick questions. I think this is a great project, and I'm looking forward to seeing it happening. But on the section between Claire's and Gross Road, on the mall side, on the bike lane there, the bicyclists have to cross traffic because the bike lane moves to being between two lanes of traffic rather than on the curb. And for me, like most people in Capitola, I drive up there fairly regularly, and traffic is sort of a mess right in that area because cars are trying to decide, are they going to go to the mall? Are they going to go straight? I mean, there seems to be a lot of lane changing. So can you tell me why the bike lane has been designed that way?
Sure. So we looked into both alternatives. They're having it kind of in between two lanes there at the intersection or all the way on the curb. That is a free right turn. People do tend to whip around that turn because it's a free right turn. So that also has some dangers, but it also can be dangerous to be between cars. We took this to the bicycle TAC with the RTC, who look at all the projects that are funded by the RTC in the county, and there really wasn't a consensus on which they felt was safer. So we went with the mid crossing, or the middle bike lane. That was the recommendation of our traffic consultant. And again, there was really no consensus with the experts that we asked at the bike TAC.
So if it were possible to keep it next to the curb, would that have any impact on people making a right-hand turn onto Claire's? I mean, I think, in all honesty, I thought about Councilmember Orbach riding on 41st with her kids and stuff and trying to cross those lanes of traffic. You're riding along the curb and then you have to cross the lane of traffic to get into the bike lane that's going down. I'm thinking, if I was trying to do that with kids, it would drive me nuts. And I'd be so afraid that someone would happen. So I'm just wondering if there is an alternative to keep it all just on the curb so people don't have to do that maneuver.
I mean, could you? Yes. Would it be safer? Likely not, unless we made it a no right turn on red. Honestly, and that I know is very frustrating on other places in the corridor for many drivers. We do have the conflict striping. Ideally, these
couldn't have a no right turn on red at Claire's. I mean, that really affects the whole mall and Brown's Ball Branch and everything else. So
that was going to be the point I was going to make. The sort of the way green bike boxes work on the free rights is no right turn on red, which makes people crazy.
Well, I just felt obligated to ask the question because it looks like it's going to be, sort of a hard maneuver there for people on bikes.
It's such a difficult stretch of road. I mean, it's like we're down to the square inch. And I know with our corridor plan, we've been looking at that and trying to see, is there any way to get any kind of buffer built into that? And I think at the end of the day, probably the answer is the only way to do that would be to narrow the median. Okay. That's where our more additional square footage would have to come from, which is obviously a lot bigger plan project.
I just have one other question. So I get that if you, move the bike lane over to the curb, then you're going to have a no right turn on red. I guess I don't quite understand the no right turn where Claire's comes into 41st Avenue, because in that situation, the bike lane is not on the curb, it's in the middle between sort of two traffic lanes. Why we made the decision of not having a right-hand turn there. This would be what I would call Claire's eastbound. Turning by the mattress place there, you're leaving the library, you're heading toward 41st Avenue, and you want to turn right and go to the freeway. Yeah. Yes. And if you don't have an answer tonight, you can, because
we've actually I have discussed that. Get this question actually quite often. Okay. So that has a time restriction to it. That's not 24 hours a day. And that's more of a vehicular safety issue. So In the past, people are making U-turns, so they turn back around to get back onto the freeway. And that's a very popular U-turn spot. And if someone's making a U-turn and then someone's also making a right, there are a number of serious collisions there in the past. Prior to my time, I think the chief can also attest to that. And so that is the purpose of that particular no right on red.
Okay. So it's like from 10 to 6. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, first as a comment, so I talked to a couple of people in the community about the whole plan that you have on 41st and had a detailed email came in. I just wanted to thank you, Jessica and Kailash, for responding back to the email in such detail. When I sent it back to one of the community members, he was very impressed with the detailed response, and so it's very much appreciated. So thank you for that. The next thing is kind of piggybacking on to this right turn. I had a couple community members reach out to me regarding the whole multimodal project, but then they all come back and they bring up, what are we doing about Cap Avenue and 41st, the right turn lane that we talk about quite a bit. And so again, heading towards Santa Cruz on Cap where you can't turn right and all the backup. And I think it's been brought up by a couple of different council members. What can, and I know it's kind of a little bit out of our scope tonight of what we're talking about, but with these right turn areas, do you think it's something that, I think it's a lot of it is frustration in the community, but, and when we have these meetings, you think you do a great job in explaining to us why we can't do that or the reason. But I was wondering, like, maybe we could just have it brought back to a meeting one night and just talk about these specific instances on where we can't do the right turn and how the community is frustrated with backing up traffic and people are waiting sometimes at like 2 to 3 different cycles. And I was just hoping that maybe we could educate us all at one time around that and talk about that and come to just an agreement together and that's the way it's going to be, or if there's some flexibility in having that changed. So hopefully that's something that could be addressed in the future.
I think that would be nice. I wasn't going to bring up that particular intersection, but I know it's very frustrating to people because personally I've sat there through several light cycles since you can't make a right-hand turn, people coming out of the bank and, the light turns green and there's a pedestrian there and they happen to be a slow person, maybe 2 cars make it through the intersection. So talking about that, I think would be helpful, not only for the community to understand, but for us to understand, because I really don't understand it all, and we need to be able to explain them.
And I think these projects that you're bringing for the enhancement are going to be amazing, but then it brings up all these other things. And so if we could just try to address those all at the same time would be great. And then I also appreciate us looking at the bid alternate. I think that's great to be able to have that. But there will be an opportunity when we see that number, when it comes back to us, to see what that pricing looks like compared. You'd be able to advise us of how good of a price that is, but we'd also want to compare that to there's only so much money, and is there enough of a value in taking that option, and that would then sacrifice doing other payment projects in the city. Because we're doing a lot of things on 41st, which is great. So I look forward to seeing how that comes back, and I think when that comes back with that alternate, maybe you could really kind of educate us on the value of why investing some, I'm just saying if that alternate's 100,000, but the value is 2, and this is why we should do it. And it's very easy for us to make that decision based on sacrificing other streets in the city not getting paved or enhanced. So, but I appreciate your strategy and looking at that and seeing how we can save the city money. And that's all my comments I have right now until we have a little deliberation. Thank you.
I just have a quick question. This is just more like, I don't know what type of question it is, but so we're talking about the base bid for the portion of the 41st Avenue and then the additive alternate. So when you put the bids out, are you putting them out at the same time or okay.
Yes, it's a single bid, and then you have 2 different, like where they actually put the numbers.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
2 different sheets, one for the base bid and then a separate sheet.
Okay, I was like, I don't want to have to put one out and then wait and put another one out or anything like that. So thanks for clarifying, because I haven't seen that before. So thank you, great presentation. I'm excited to get this moving. I think we can go to public comment now. So anybody that would like to speak on this item?
Yeah, hello, I'd like to speak on this item. I'm not going to call a point of order to read this into the record. My name is James Ewan Whitman. This is February 12th, 2026. General Government Public Hearings, number 8, number A, 41st Avenue Pavement Rehabilitation and Multi-Modal Improvements. Recommended action, approve the plan, specifications, and construction budget of $1.7 million for the 41st Avenue Pavement Rehabilitation and Multi-Modal Improvements Project, and authorize the Department of Public Works to advertise for construction bids. That's fine. It's 30 seconds. So listening to what you guys said, doesn't really necessarily affect the area that's from the highway to the end of 41st, which is Soquel. I'll say out of the 5 bike flat tires I've gotten in 2,400 miles in 4 months, 2 of them were from going over that overpass. 1 was from leaving here because a staple was in my tire. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the intersection that's at 41st and Soquel. So from the beginning of Soquel, downtown Santa Cruz, all the way past State Park Drive, they have put in all the cameras and the weaponized streetlights, and people refer to those as the flock cameras, and they're taking physical pictures. Human beings can only see 5% of the light spectrum. I travel that area on Soquel all the time, and I'm attacked at every freaking intersection. I can feel that technology going through my eyes, but I'm more aware of it and I'm not ignoring it. So although I think it's kind of important for all this infrastructure and the things to be covered up, I also want to point out that on March 23rd, I walked into the city of Santa Cruz to pick up a hard copy of their meeting schedule. And I came on Tuesday for the regular meeting, and it was overcast and raining, and that was my first experience with the previous police chief, Andy Mills, behaving like a panicked child. It's a pandemic, really quite embarrassing. It happened. Anyway, so we had this lockdown. Gail Newell.
Will you please stay on?
This is on the damn subject.
Excuse me. You will not speak to me like that here.
Okay. Excuse me. This is on the subject.
You're talking about Santa Cruz right now.
No, I'm talking about the end that is one of those 27 intersections on the top of 41st, and it's all part of the weapons infrastructure. I have 33 seconds.
Please finish.
So what they've done in that 4 years after the lockdown is the infrastructure exploded. All over Capitola, there were fiber optics that went underneath. So yeah, the roads have all been damaged, and 41st is going to be repaired. But those weapons infrastructures are active. And the reality is we have 110 residential and 3-phase. 3-phase uses the common black, the common red, and the blue. So when residential and commercial power is out, the blue wire, all those weapons are still activated. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll take it back to deliberation. Councilmember Westman?
I made all my comments earlier. I'd be welcome to make a motion, but we'll let Councilmember Jensen.
No comments.
Okay. I will make a motion to approve the plan specification and construction budget of $1,700,000 for the 41st Avenue Pavement Rehabilitation and Multimodal Improvement Project, and authorize the Department of Public Works to advertise for construction bids.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Passes unanimously. We'll go down to 8B. This is our update on Measure Y, sales tax. We'll welcome our Finance Director, Jim.
We're going to do our best to get a little bit more of the real estate available for presentations. There we go.
This wasn't on.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So as the Mayor just said, this is a Measure Y sales tax update. Next slide, please. So Measure Y was approved by voters in 2024 with 67.5% of voters voting yes, so a very strong approval rating. And it replaced Measure F, which is a 1/4% sales tax that generated about $1.1 million annually, but was set to expire or sunset in December of 2027. So Measure Y replaced that, became effective April 1st, and it is a 0.5% sales tax. So it replaced the 1.1 million and added an additional 1.1 million to what we were previously receiving under Measure F. It also extended the sunset from by 8 years to December 31st of 2035. So at the time that we were considering Measure Y, I'm going to go through a few slides that were presented to the public as we were getting ready to put this on the ballot. So this was the budget forecast that was presented in August of 2024. This was showing proposed numbers. Our actual adopted budget changed slightly. Those first two numbers were 30,000 and 39,000. So it's a slight change. But the important thing is it shows that our deficit, if you will, is out when Measure Y expires. What happened was about a month after these numbers were presented to the public, we got updated CalPERS numbers, and they had in 2024, were forecasting that our CalPERS UAL would be level, and the new numbers that we received in September of 2024 added about $756,000 over a 2-year period, which changed a lot of our forecasts. So what was driving the budget shortfalls? Measure F expiring, as I mentioned, rising pension costs, and additionally sales tax, which is our primary revenue, does not keep up with inflation. So as I mentioned, the PERS retirement costs, at the time we were projecting a $2.8 million gap, and it was leveling out there. Now that is $3.6 million gap, or UAL payment, not a gap, I'm sorry, a UAL payment. So a $600,000 increase there, rounding numbers, was added on to that. Next slide, please. And then sales tax, also it doesn't, we've seen all of these, this was presented in August of 24, how sales tax doesn't keep pace with inflation. At that time it was about 2.2, almost 2.3 million short. It's now about 3.1 million of spending power that we've lost due to inflation. So trying to figure out how are we going to fill this gap, we went out and did some polling and found that a majority of voters recognize the city's needs for funding and were willing to pay for services through taxes. And they listed those 5 items up there as their top 5 priorities, being public safety response, roads, sidewalks, and bike lanes, beach and new wharf, youth recreation programs, and support for small businesses. So why a sales tax as our choice to come up with a revenue to cover their projected fiscal challenges? Again, there's a lot of support for sales tax measures. It also helps balance out the paying between visitors and residents. A lot of our costs that we incur are due to high tourism. Measure F expiring, so we had a 0.25%, if you will, of room to play with under our ability to implement sales tax. And then also sales tax, like I said, it spreads it out. About 1/3 of all sales tax is paid by residents. The other 2/3 by people that visit our mall and shop along 41st Avenue and in the village, along with our tourists. Next slide, please. Additionally, beginning in July of 2024, we are the most dependent city on, we are the most dependent on sales tax as a revenue source in the county. And without Measure Y, even with Measure F, we had the lowest sales tax rate in the county at the time. And then again, sales taxes use general fund tax to pay for essential city services and infrastructure needs. Next slide. It's kind of repetitive. General revenue services for the community. Again, these are slides from the August of 2024. So public safety and community policing, the beach, roads and parks, the wharf, and recreation and youth programming. Next slide. So this is the voter information, the argument from the voter pamphlet that went out that lists the what the uses were going to be. I don't know that you want me to read that whole thing, but it's basically the proposed 5% sales tax will help Capitola sustain vital services. Those services include all of those things that are listed up there, which were the top 5, and some other things that were important to the community. Next slide. So the question posed on the ballot is up there, and it was to protect essential city services, including public safety and emergency services, repair potholes, maintain streets, sidewalks, bike lanes, beaches, the new wharf, and recreation programs for youth, improve traffic safety, and support local businesses. So you can see just about everything that we do. Shall the city of Capitola replace the 0.25% sales tax approved by voters in 2016 with a 0.5% sales tax, generating approximately $2.2 million annually for general government use for 10 years with independent audits and funds staying local. We've been asked what would happen if Measure Y had failed. So just to summarize, there was a lot of things that were negotiated that were contingent upon the passage of Measure Y, but kind of the big takeaways were, had it failed, our police officers' pay would be reduced by 6%, Public Works crew 2%. I use those two groups because that represents about 50% of our employees in just those two groups. Monthly healthcare costs for all employees would have risen by $50 for individuals, $75 for employees plus one, and $100 per month for employees plus family. Those were increases that were contingent on Measure Y, so employees wouldn't have gotten those healthcare increases in 25 and 26. Other positions not listed up there, we had I want to say 6 or 7 positions that did not receive a market adjustment. 4 in the POA and 2 in ACE. No, 2 in, I might have that backwards, 2 in the POA and 4 in ACE. But other than those 4 or 5 positions, all the other positions received somewhere between a 1 and 16.9% increase. Had Measure Y failed, all of those would not have taken place. The other thing that was contingent was we had a bunch of different longevity plans for each of the different bargaining groups, and council had a desire to have parity. So once we Measure Y was passed, everybody went to the same longevity plan, which was a small cost at the time that kind of grows over time as people hit different thresholds. And then there would have been probable impacts to recruitment and retention, but that's kind of hard to estimate what that would be without speaking to all the employees that were here. Next slide, please. So on the revenue and expenditures, had Measure Y not passed, our city costs would have been about $500,000 lower from the market adjustments and benefit improvements, kind of that have compounded, but our revenue would have been 1.1 million lower. So without Measure Y, none of those things would have happened on the slide before, and we would have needed to come up with an additional $600,000 in service cuts to balance the budget in this current fiscal year. Additionally, in 27-28, Measure F would have expired, and we would be looking for another 1.1 million in those years. Next slide, please. So as a Measure Y summary, this was presented during one of the budget hearings in May. I think these carried all the way through. We never changed these going through. So this was our Measure Y summary of estimated revenues at a little over 1.1 million and personnel increase of almost the same amount, 1.105. Those costs, the 449 there was the contingent equity adjustments and benefit increases. The increase to CalPERS, 343. Again, we were projecting about a $100,000 increase before, based on what CalPERS had told us the year before. And then that's followed up with a second increase that's almost as big to get to the 756 over the 2 fiscal years. And then cost of living adjustments, step increases, that's pretty much annually, $313,000 roughly there. So this is a pie chart, and basically this shows the same thing, but shows you that there was a little over $17,000 of Measure Y revenue that wasn't formally allocated to anything. It was just kind of included in the general fund budget, but not really designated to any particular purpose. So we could go back and designate that to any of the things that council had on their goals during budget adoption. Next slide, please. So a summary of the last fiscal year 24-25. Again, Measure Y started in April 1st, so we only received 1 quarter of revenues, which was a total of $574,000. Half of that was new revenue, and half was basically replacing what we would have gotten with Measure F. At the mid-year budget review, we had estimated 277, so the actuals came in about 10,000 higher. And we were estimating, again, if April 1st through June 30th. The CDTFA policy of when it becomes effective is 110 days, the first of the month, 110 days following certification of the election. So if we have election in early November, certified in early December, becomes the first of the month following 110 days, which would be late March, so April 1st is the day. The 227 of salary market adjustments was negotiated to become effective the first full pay period following certification of the election. That was officially December 22nd, with the first paycheck hitting that first week of January of 2025. So a lot of times we'll say January of 25 because that's when the paycheck hit, but it actually became effective December 22nd of 24. So we did come in 10,000 higher. We had $50,000 of surplus revenue, or a revenue above what was in the contingencies, and then an additional 10 that came in over our estimate. So we had 60,000 of Measure Y revenue above what we anticipated, but our Bradley Burns was 151 below budget, so that just kind of helped offset that. For this fiscal year, our first quarter receipts are almost 557,000. It's slightly below our budget, but our budget for the first quarter is we just kind of allocate our percentage of what we get over history. It's moved around a lot these first 2 quarters over the last 3 fiscal years, so we think we're slightly below budget based on that. We've gotten our first 2 estimates, which look like they're tracking a little better than what we got last year at this time. So we think the second quarter is going to be okay, but the estimates don't really tell you anything. You don't really know until you get that true up. And so CDTFA, which is California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, we receive it 2 months in arrears. So we get 2 estimates 2 months after the fact, or month, and then we get a true up 2 months later. So our December payment will come in February. If that makes sense. Next slide. So conclusion, Measure-wise, performing kind of as we expected. It's pretty close to what our budget estimates were based on how Measure F performed. I will get the statement will be released on February 19th of what our payment is, and then we actually get the funds on February 24th. So when we do our mid-year budget review on the 26th, we will know what our Measure Y revenue is through December 31st. And then if we need to make any adjustments one way or the other, then we would make those recommendations at that time. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We'll start with questions.
I do have some questions, and I apologize because I actually have sort of a list of them, but this has been a little bit of a difficult topic for me to sort of wrap my head around because I was actually not involved in the beginning of this process. So I have a couple, I'll just sort of go through these and ask you my questions and make certain that how I think this all worked is the way that it did work. And what I understand is that in the early part of, I'll say early part of 24, and I may not have my dates exactly right, the city did a study to look at all city positions to determine what the salary should be for those positions based on what is being paid in other comparable jurisdictions. And based on that, the city entered into negotiations with the various labor groups and city employee groups to negotiate a new MOUs. And those negotiations ended in June of 24. I think someone mentioned that those MOUs were adopted the same night that the budget was adopted for that year. And so my assumption is that based on those being approved in June of 24, some of the things that have affected this amount, and one of the reasons why there's only like $17,000 left in that money for this year is they were unknown in June of 24. I mean, the council made decisions based on the information that they had at that time just the way sort of all councils would. And after agreeing to the MOUs, which were going to put raises in effect if Measure Y passed, the Measure Y went on the ballot in August. The council authorized that. And it was sort of in September that the city got information about the PERS increase and the ULR. So measures on the ballot, and we made statements about, $600,000 for employees, and I'm using round numbers, $400,000 for projects, but that didn't come to fruition because other costs came into effect. If I say anything that's wrong, please correct me. I'm sort of going through this. And luckily for the city and for the employees, Measure Y did pass in November. And since the agreements adopted the prior June already clarified when the salary increases were going to go into effect, there really wasn't any council action that took place in December or January because everything had previously been agreed to. Is that pretty much correct?
So I think the basic overall arc is exactly right. Not every position in the city was evaluated in the salary survey. We evaluate the midpoint in a class. So for worker 1, 2, 3, we evaluate the twos, and the same thing on the planner series. But basically, that's correct. I think there was council action to approve in December to approve the new salary schedule, I believe.
Correct. They would have certified the election and approved the salary schedule.
Yeah, so there was council action in December, but it was really to do the things that were outlined in the MOUs that the city had already committed to.
So, for a lot of people, and then the money from Measure Y didn't come into the city till starting in April of that year. So I could look at this and I could say, the city made a mistake by starting the new salaries in January because you weren't going to have new Measure Y money until starting in April. So you had to use like $25,000 of general fund money to make that up. I could also say, which is absolutely true, that the city received enough money from the Measure Y payment for the fourth quarter to cover all of those costs. I mean, it just depends on what your point of view is and how you want to look at it. And, some people say to me, well, what happened to the Measure F money? And the reality is after April 1st, there is no Measure F money because if you read Measure Y, it eliminated Measure F totally. So the city was able to meet its obligation, pay the employees the increases that they had received. It's just that, I think for some people, they would look at this differently and say the city was derelict in, giving raises before we had the money to do it. But luckily, we ended up having the money to do it.
Can I just jump in one question, just a question? You said $25,000. Wasn't it $250,000 between December and April 1, the increase of salaries?
Right. Well, I may have misspoken because to use round numbers, the salaries cost $500,000 for 6 months. So it would have been $250 for the first quarter and $250 for the second quarter. But the way the city does its budget, it doesn't sort of go by quarters. It's, what happens in the end because we do fund accounting. And so, the city spends money all the time on things before they get the money received. I think it's quite common for cities to scramble a lot in November about even how they're going to make payroll because you don't get your big chunk of money from property taxes until December.
Yeah, I think the information I've received from the salary increase until April 1, when we collected the tax, was about a $250,000 number. Is that correct?
About half that. The increase in salaries from December 22nd through June 30th was $227,000 for that entire time.
Okay.
The revenue generated from April 1st through June 30th was $277. So the revenue generated in the fourth quarter did cover the full 6 months.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that, that makes sense to me, and it's confusing because, one example I sort of use is that if you're a family, you make decisions about where your money is going to be spent. You can decide to go on vacation, you can decide to put money away for your children's college. And that's a job that the council has, is to sort of make those decisions about where this general fund money that's Measure Y is going to go. So there was nothing illegal done. There was nothing that, some people can complain and say, well, I think the salary increases were too much. I think the salary increases were too little. I think you shouldn't have made them effective until April 1st. But, those were decisions that were made long before, all the way back in June of 2024. And those decisions at those dates were made on the information that they had at that time, not additional information we've received. Okay, I think I understand it, and I have a few more comments that I'll make under comments rather than questions.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I just want to thank Jim for going through this. This has been an issue in the community for, I'd say, the last year in confusion. And so I think, what's the best thing to do? Sit down and talk about it, ask the questions, and appreciate your honesty to, kind of set the record straight and make sure that we're all on the same page. So a lot of my question comes just from the community. I think it just comes from clarifying maybe some potential misunderstandings and having the record set straight. Going back to confusion, so if you go back and look at, I was at the time campaigning and I was out knocking at doors and worked on the committee and to support Measure Y. And I was out campaigning to the community saying, why this was good is that we were going to give a cost increase to our employees. In my background, I was a union president. I supported labor. I 100%, in fair wages and stuff. So that was a very easy sell. And then the highlight was that there was going to be this excess of funds. So I know the number was always thrown around from our committee, which had 2 council members on it at the time, was there's about $300,000 to $400,000 in extra money left over, because the salaries I think were projected at the time about $700,000 of increase. And so if the sales tax comes in right, we'd have this extra money. And where that adds a lot of validity is I went back and was watching city council meetings, and our mayor at the time said, the reason why she was going to be supporting this measure was she's really tired of walking around our community and having people say, we want this fixed, we want that fixed. And she said, I'm tired of that. There's not going to be any money for that. And so by supporting Measure Y, we're going to have extra money to take care of extra projects. And so when we have those 2 things going down the road, we have people like myself walking out and telling people this is what we're going to have and how things look. And we have the council speaking from what we knew at that time was we're going to have extra money and be able to do extra projects. And then people look at those, our enhancements to the thing. We also go back to when we supported Measure F. We had approximately, is it okay for me to use $1 million for Measure F that we got every year? Yeah, is that approximately what we get on a 0.25% sales tax?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when we look back on Measure F and we'd say, oh, well, we bought a $380,000 tractor. We worked on our wharf. We worked on the jetty. Am I correct? Am I wrong? Oh, no, I'm sorry. If I'm incorrect, please. And so they looked at those are enhancements. And so we have this track record a Measure F, and supported police. I think we added 2 officers, or maybe they weren't officers, but certain, so we added some safety staff. And so our ballot measure, Measure F, said, we're going to provide staffing, we're going to provide safety, we're going to work on our warfare and everything. And then we come out with Measure Y. It appealed Measure F, but it still had the same talking points, supporting our employees, but also projects and everything like that. And so now where we are, after passing Measure Y, total support of what we did for our employees. But if we break the 2 up and how I have to mentally break it up and say, there's Measure Y and there's an F section just for myself of $1 million, that now we're not doing any of the projects that we did before, and that money is now sitting in the general fund. And then the new 0.25% sales tax in Measure Y has all gone to the employees, and the pension reserve funds have gone up and stuff like that. But we have $17,000 left to spend after $2 million in sales tax. And so when I talked to our city manager, he said, yeah, it goes into our general fund, which was noted. So I go back and I start try to think, and I spoke from the podium many times and said, I think there needs to be some sort of oversight. When I went back and watched the council meetings, I know 2 of our council members asked for a resolution and said there should be a resolution that we should give a commitment back to our community with Measure Y, on what projects we're going to do. And so the projects that were highlighted were the Cliff Resiliency Project. I forget, there's 2 or 3 other projects that are very clearly. And so I went back and I watched all the council meetings, and we never came back with a resolution. And, that's hindsight. That was the previous council. But, that's kind of a way that we would have been putting a commitment back to our voters and saying, as you pass the sales tax, we are committed as a council at that time. Now, I understand council changes every 2 years and it's like that. But, I look back and I just say, how could we grow or be better? And so in the future, I would think if we ever did another one of these again, we should be very clear that, we should highlight out what we're saying we're going to do and then be able to perform to that and be able to tell the story very clearly. And so I appreciate the numbers add up the way you go through them. It's just frustrating to some of the community members that say, we passed Measure Y and now we're not even doing the Measure F, but all that money, we're not buying tractors anymore, we're not doing things, and now that money's just in the general fund, and we are barely being able to afford Margot's crosswalk, right? Up on, on Stockton, which probably is, maybe $17,000 in itself. It also puts us in a position that as a council, we're trying to scrape to find $13,000 for a project up on the bluff. And so we all give up our money out of our kitty like to show good leadership, in which I appreciate everybody's support for that. So those are just some of the, I just want to make sure I share that very clearly from the community, some of the frustrations and stuff. It's not directed at staff, and it's just a predicament that we're in, but how can we communicate this clearly? And with that measure, with Measure Y, that money just comes into the general fund. And I would like to maybe later on, after we go out to public comment, talk about how we can clarify that even further, and so our community completely knows. I want to use the word accountability. That's not saying that we aren't accountable for it, but how we can show accountability. So I'm worried about Measure Z, the next tax measure that we're going to have to go out for, and how we can set ourselves up that the community totally understands that things do change, but we're very clear and talk about that. Let's see, a couple other questions. You talk about the sales tax. So sales tax right now is projected to be lower than what we're expecting, right? Or where are we tracking right now with sales tax? Yeah.
Sales tax for this fiscal year, I think we're pretty close to budget. I'll know for a lot better on the 20th or 19th.
Overall, our budget, we're barely balanced. We're kind of in a deficit right now, right?
I wouldn't say deficit. I'd say we're tracking very close to budget right now.
Okay.
I look at mid-year, the stuff I'm looking at so far, we have some things that are a little over 50%, some things that are a little under, so we're really, really close.
We have a lot of unknowns.
We have some unknowns. If you remember, when we set up the budget, we start with only $500,000 to play with. And when we missed last year by $151,000, that means that 500 we thought we were starting with was really 151 less.
Right.
So we started out in the hole. And so that's why we don't have really a lot of wiggle room. And then if we get a good sales tax number, then we will be fine. If it's below budget, then we probably have to start looking at how do we get to the end of June.
Right. And that process just help us in the community. When is that process going to start? That's going to be our mid-year we look at?
Yes, on the 26th.
Okay. And so we'll start looking at, you'll be able to give us a final projection on where we're tracking with all our costs and everything like that.
Okay. The sales tax is the last number we're waiting for. It just happens to be the biggest number in the whole mid-year.
Yeah, but I think it's good. And, again, I appreciate the Measure Y, and I would advocate for Measure Y to always be put separate, than like what looks like we're a week or one meeting before our mid-year. And I think that's good to highlight it, and be able to tell our community, thank you for supporting Measure Y and how we're using that money before we get into talking about a $20 million budget. And to me, I kind of get lost in those numbers. And so I think it's very good to highlight that. Let's see. Can you just help us in the community and myself understand with these increase in, the pension costs and stuff like that, do they never send out a projection? Is there never a trend? I mean, and then how do you work with other, if we went and talked to Scotts Valley or we went and talked to Watsonville, are they in the same predicament like sticker shock when they get it? Is there no projection? How does that really work?
So CalPERS puts out an actuarial report typically at the end of August, 1st of September each year. The last couple of years, it's been closer to end of September and early October. In that, they tell you what your normal cost is going to be, like a percentage of payroll that we just pay on a regular ongoing basis. And then they tell you what your UAL is going to be for that coming up fiscal year, which is actually based on data from 2 years earlier. They lag by 2 years before they update that. And then they project out 5 years. So in 2024, they were projecting out the UAL staying flat. And this is what we'd been hearing since 2013 when PEPRA came in, is that we would see an increase in UAL for about 4 years, then a leveling off. I thought they said for about 4 before it started to come down. It went up from 2013 until 2021, 22, and then finally leveled off. And Jamie and I thought we finally hit the end of our 4 years a decade later. And then in the 2 years since then, it's skyrocketed up. So when we were looking at 2024, they were projecting a flat UAL. And then a year later, all of a sudden they increase it 300,000, 340 the 1 year and like 317 the following year. And then it comes back down flat in 2029, I believe. I'll get another one next August that could look totally different.
And again, every city, every finance director is like you pulling their hair out about these things and thinks that there is no projection.
I would say the majority of them are, yeah. I haven't looked at what Scotts Valley's UAL is, but I'm going to guess it's very similar. It's probably less because they have less employees. I believe the city of Santa Cruz made like a $6 million lump sum payment in like 2018 or 19 when they had surplus cash, and it had minimal impact on their UAL. And that's what CalPERS will always tell you. If you want to pay it down, throw a lot of cash at us. We paid $5 million in 2007, took it down to almost zero, and here we are with a $33 million UAL.
And then just one final last question, sorry for all the questions, is when we knew in August that the ULA pension number was going to go up and stuff, was there a time, and I saw in your presentation, like you said, it was updated in May, did we go back to the community and mention that and I just might have missed that part, but did we mention that, hey, these salaries that we're projecting, this Measure Y, 4% sales tax is going to eat up all that because of these projections are so high?
Not that I recall, no.
Okay. All right, that's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I guess I have a question in regards to, say in this instance, this 17,000. Moving forward, is tonight an appropriate time where we can decide that with Measure Y funding, if there is this ending balance of extra, I don't want to say extra because we'll use it, but that it wouldn't just get dumped into the general fund, that we would have some offset so that council's clear, the community's clear that it's available to be either put towards roads or what, something on the jetty or whatever. So if that's something that we could clarify this evening, I'll look to the attorney. I don't know.
It seems, I'm going to interrupt you a little bit. When we look at our budget, for this year and next year, there's going to be, more money that comes in from the new Measure Y that includes Measure F and Measure Y. So I think that the appropriate place to do that is when we look at our budget. I mean, it's the council that will decide how general fund money gets spent. I mean, that's the one place where, we sort of get to make some decisions. And I think it would be appropriate, since we did go to the community and we did ask them to vote on this, that we come up with projects, that we designate, that we're going to say these are projects that we are going to pay for with our Measure Y money. And it seems, at that point, we'll know how much, when we do our budget discussions, how much of Measure Y is going to go to continue to pay the salary increases. We're going to know how much is going to be left over. And, it seems to me that if the salary increases equal about $1 million a year, then there's going to be $1 million left over that, right now is being spent on other things, but we could choose to designate some of that money to go to various projects that people want to have. But we should do that in a budget process where we have time to, sort of evaluate them and look at the whole picture, not just one particular thing, because Measure Y money is general fund money. I mean, that's the measure that was passed, and general fund money all goes into one pot, and then the council needs to decide how they're going to spend that general fund money, obviously with getting some advice from our staff because they're more knowledgeable in a lot of these areas. But for me, that would be the time to do that. I mean, I don't want to say $17,000 is insignificant, but, we're at this point this year and, just designating and saying, well, that $17,000 went to pay for your blinky lights on, the crosswalk at the bridge, seems a little contrived to me. I can't come up with another word, and I don't think we want to seem contrived. We want to let the community know that we've been thoughtful about what we're doing and how we're spending their money.
Okay, so my question can pause and we'll pick it up at our budget meeting. So I don't have any other granular questions, so we'll go to public comment. Anybody wishes to speak on this item?
Hi, good evening, Leslie Nielsen. Thank you so much for having this discussion. It is something the public asks about, and I understand a fair amount of this. Most people don't, and I'm not entirely sure the council who made some of the decisions along the way really understood. It's difficult. These people are professionals and they get paid to understand this stuff. You ask great questions, but stuff happens, right? 110 days. I suspect most people sitting up there when they decided to make make a contingent on passing didn't realize there would be that gap. Okay, so let's just talk about that. Okay. What happens, happens. And now what we have to do is understand there's tax fatigue in the county and the world and the community. We have to kind of regroup and get the public to trust what we're doing. And it's all one bucket. It's the general fund. So we dive deep on Measure Y. It was all spent on salaries. Well, we have this human capital now. It's great, right? But that human capital needs operating funds to do the things they do, right? So we got to be careful we don't get in a position where we got this fairly paid human capital who doesn't have the resources to do stuff. So do something with the mid-year budget review to start creating metrics that can simplify the message to the public. We bought the slurry for the public works people to fix the potholes because we had money. You got to have the stuff for the people to do the work. Now we got the people. Let's give the people the money to do the stuff that they need to do. People don't get into the level of detail all of you do, but there's concern out there. And my concern is that if we don't start being more transparent and start showing some metrics on how we spent things according to what we said we would do in ballot language, that we're just gonna have a really hard time passing more measures to bring in the revenue to the city that we're really gonna need, if that makes any sense. And the FAC has a bunch of ideas. We've been working with Jim. There's little things. I mean, I said earlier, I was super happy about how this whole thing went down, and I really was. And we had to pay a permit fee to go down on the beach with the tractor today. 3 years ago, we didn't have to do that. I was so happy to pay that. So let's find all the ways we can to generate more revenue for the city. But at the same time, let's give back to the people what we said that we would do in the ballot language. Otherwise, we won't pass stuff again going forward. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Marilyn Garrett. Thank you for this discussion. It was very illuminating, and I can see how you are trying to act in a very responsible way in allocating funds the best you can. As I was listening, I was thinking, you know, I used to teach elementary school, and I'm all for money for schools, a bumper sticker that said, "It'll be a great day when the schools have all the money they need, and the Air Force has to have a bake sale to buy a bomber." And I'm thinking over approximately half of our tax dollars are just siphoned right out of our communities for the military budget. And this woman who just spoke said, we don't have resources to do stuff. So the question is, why? What is this disparity and misallocation of our tax money? Something's wrong with this whole structure. And I was listening about ICE, and people who join ICE are offered $50,000 to be in this Gestapo-like raids of people of color, $50,000, and then they get debt forgiveness. I'm thinking, this is all wrong. This is violence. We need this for our communities, for the well-being of the community, like you are really trying to do. And it's like we're fighting over the crumbs of what's left, you know, 17,000 here, whatever. I'm just, something's very wrong with the structure of this system where the billionaires and the military have all the money to do what they want. We should be taxing the billionaires. Measure Y, all right, but let's tax the billionaires who make their money being thieves off the public. Anyway, thank you for what you're trying to do with what you have.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none. So I think the direction today is just to receive the report. I don't know if there's any other comment.
I have two questions. Was there the reason? What was the reason for not doing a resolution in the past on commitment from what potential projects could look like?
It's a good question. I remember in a couple of years, I remember robust conversations around that. Mayor Morgan, you were also there, and you may have better recollection than I. I think there was pros and cons, and at the end of the day, I think the decision the council made was that between the ballot language and the ballot argument, that was sufficient, and passing a resolution wasn't really the appropriate vehicle that they chose to use. But Mayor Morgan, if you may have better recollection than
I think when we got down to it, basically what Ms. Westman said is that it it's all the same pot. And so to get kind of menial and start earmarking things, I think that was muddying the waters in a way where we knew a large portion of it was going to go to the increases and staff retention and everything. And so that was definitely in the forefront. And then I think language wise and like straightforward wise, it was like, okay, so it's going to go to general fund, which again, once a year, we go over what our goals are and what we're going to use from that general fund. So I think it seemed, to maybe trite or just a little nitpicky on each specific thing. So it was more of a broad decision, I guess, which, it probably now it looks like we're in trouble, but I don't think, I don't think that was ever the case, was that anybody was trying to be nefarious or not get money where money is deserved, or less work on our roads, or have less concrete for our public works to use, or anything like that. And, you have these blow up of numbers that are unexpected, and hopefully when those are readjusted, then when we're cash cowing it and we can do all the projects, like that's always the goal too. That's just, I think the council was all in favor of it, and we were all working to try to move it forward with the help of the committee. So, that's all I can really remember about like our thought process and where we were trying to get with it.
Yeah, I totally appreciate everything the council did, and I also appreciate the community members that worked on it. My question just comes from the basis of looking forward on what educating ourselves from the city manager's position or the city attorney about, is there a negative to do a resolution or something like that? Taking that one step further, when we did the TOT tax, and there's a restricted fund for the youth programs, right? Is that just another mechanism to ensure that funds are getting put in certain categories? Or is there a difference between a sales tax and a TOT tax? You can't restrict funds?
So it comes down to the type of tax that's proposed by the council. In this case, it was what's called a general tax, a general fund tax, which goes into a city's general fund. And that requires 50+1% vote approval. When you propose a specific tax for a specific use, for a city at least, it requires a 66% majority. And so that tax, the TOT, was subject to that 66% threshold, and it included some general fund. I believe it was a 1.25% general fund increase, but it also included the two specific earmarks, one to support local business groups and one to support our early childhood and youth fund. So yes, there are different flavors of taxes.
My question is like loaded to trying to educate the community what the difference between the two, because why do we have one that's restricted for a certain category that everybody in the community totally supports, but at the same time, then there's not. Kind of building off of what Councilmember Westman said, with the trying to have a better understanding of, and maybe also from public comment, to better understand that we highlight the good things we are doing measure-wise. And so if there's $2 million coming in, and if we use rough numbers, and there's $1 million going to salaries, should we highlight what the other $1 million is going for in our mid-year budget? So it's not just the $17,000, because, it's kind of funny we're talking about that, just the 17. I'm talking about the overall thing. Is that where you were trying to go with that?
I think that where I'm trying to go is that I do think when we go through the budget, we're going to highlight some projects that we spend, that we're going to do with what we say is Measure Y money. And in all honesty, that's almost sort of being disingenuous in a way, because Measure Y money is just general fund money. It's not any kind of special money. And just being someone who voted for Measure Y, I voted for Measure Y more because Measure F was going to expire, and this is a way of extending the city being able to get money for its general fund to do the things that it does. So I'm not willing to commit that all, the money that comes in, because we know it's a the money that equals 1/4% of our sales tax should be segregated and, paid for salaries and only for projects, because um, I don't think that's really what the city wants to do. But I do think we owe it to the community to say, we are able to do this project this year because we have extra money in our general fund because you voted for this project. And the money that we designate to that pot may equal, $400,000, it may equal $600,000, but for me personally, I wouldn't commit that, it's got to be $1 million, which was the sort of 1/4%. But I think that's all things that we will work out and talk about, when we do our budget. I think this whole item just got confusing for people. Government is not looked at kindly these days by anyone, whether it's our local government, the state government, the federal government. And so, people are always wanting to try fault with something that we're doing. And when you have something as complicated as how this played out, you can look at it and say, the city made a terrible mistake here. They shouldn't have done that. Well, that's your opinion of what the choice you would have made if you were on the council, but that's not the choice that the people who were on the council at that time made. And I do think we need to be, transparent. I do think we need to say, this measure passed, and we really appreciate that it did. If you read the language, it talks about, a lot of the money going for employees. And we do, if you're a city, the most valuable asset we have are our employees, because without those people, there's really not anything going on here. And I think most of the community is pretty happy with how the city's going right now in some areas. So it's time to move on.
Yeah, I appreciate just a healthy discussion about this and having an agenda. So thank you for doing that. And I look forward to discussing this, I guess, in the mid-year and see if we could really highlight and show our community how Measure Y funds are being spent. And I appreciate, Jim, your time and Jamie's time. I know I've asked you a lot of questions this last week about this, and I think it's just, these questions come deep and from the community, and I think transparency about this is really important. So thank you.
Thank you, Council, for the comments. I think that there's just a couple things I would like to add to the conversation is that, I think for those of us who follow cities and have watched other cities and things that they do, I've seen cities before in the past who passed a tax measure and then the next day they adopt a new MOU with the employee and labor groups. And to be honest, I think that there's reason why you might want to be skeptical in a situation like that. This council, our old council, they approved the MOUs in June. And as Councilmember Westman pointed out, the ballot item was put on afterwards, and the election was 6 months later. So in terms of transparency, I think that the city did a pretty good job. Whether it was well advertised, what was contained in those MOUs is maybe debatable, but certainly it was there and the information was available and it was clear. The other thing I would say is, this was an investment in the human capital of the city. And I think in the last 12 months alone, off the top of my head, I can think of more than $4 million that between the police department and public works department, we've been able to obtain in resources for this city to invest in our infrastructure. So it may, at the end of the day, may not be that there's a lot of extra general fund available to build things, but what we are able to do is have the capital and the talent to be able to go out and get the funds to get the projects done.
So since you're talking, I have one more thing to say. One of the things going through this process and listening to the community is I've heard all sorts of claims about, salaries of city employees. And I know that on our website right now, because I think we're required to by state law, you have to have each one of your positions up there and the salary schedule has to be on there. And our current one on our website went up in June of 24. No, it went up in June of 25. Yes, June of 25. And then it seems like it was updated with the new salaries as they went into effect in January.
So we would have adopted a salary schedule with the budget in June of 2024.
Right.
And when Measure Y passed, we amended that salary schedule to show all of the changes that were contingent upon Measure Y. And then with the budget for this year, we have an updated salary schedule, which incorporated all the Measure Y stuff that was already there, plus the cost of living adjustments. Because so this year was cost of living adjustments of 3%, and then the 50, 75, and 100.
Right, so if anyone wants to know how much money somebody's making, they can go to the city's website, they can look up, city manager, finance director, whoever, police chief, whoever they want, and they can see what their salary is. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
All right. There's also one statewide, so you can look up any
I know what I'm doing
employee in the state.
tonight when I get home.
I think it's called Transparent California, so right?
Yeah,
That was-
and that one actually is a private group that puts that together. It's not any kind of government agency. And I think it's probably, a real service to the people in California. And you can look up what people get in their pension. You can look up how much money they make. All of that is public information. And that's all part of our goal of, trying to be transparent. Nobody's trying to keep any secrets about where it's going. So I just wanted to make certain that the schedule that we have up now is updated.
It is.
Okay.
So the schedule that's up there shows an employee in, let's say, June of 24 before Measure Y pass, and have their salary, and then.
No, the schedule that's up there now will only show what they're currently making.
All right.
You don't go back in time.
Okay. I was just wondering so how, there's just what their new salary is, and so no one would know what the increase was for Measure Y? I mean, I think that's something to highlight, right? I mean, other than you just highlight just the
We
one
can
big
get
number.
that information. We had it all when we did the, when we adopted the MOUs. We had all of them listed by position.
Maybe we
I
just brought
started
that
doing
back to
that
the
for this
mid.
presentation, and it was a lot of slides.
Maybe we just have that when we do the mid thing.
Or if you just, I'd be fine if they just sent that to the council. I don't think we have to do that at the mid-year budget, but that'd be fine with me. I'd be interested in seeing that information if you don't mind. If you say you have it and it's not too big of a deal to get it out, just send it to the council. I don't think it needs to be an agenda item.
Salary schedule, I think, would be a public document now, right? Yeah, so we can do the whole salary schedule.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Salary study, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Yes. All right, we'll go to item 8C. Ms. Khan is back. This is Measure Q grant application. Recommended action is to authorize the staff to submit a Tier 2 Measure Q Community Impact Grant application in the amount not to exceed $325,000. We're talking about the invasive species, native habitat restoration, and imperative signage improvements adjacent to Park at Brisbane Mansion along Soquel Creek.
Still workshopping the title of the project. It was very long. Next slide, please. So for those of you in the audience who may not be aware, Measure Q was a voter ballot initiative in November of 2024 in Santa Cruz County with the objective of improving water quality, reducing wildfire risk, protecting wildlife habitat, and expanding equitable access to parks and open space across the county. For that program, there was quite a bit of money that went to several programs, including a formula cost that the city received, and now there's also a grant program, which is what we're talking about this evening. The grants were broken up into two tiers. While one tier was less than $50,000, that is intended for pilot projects and public education, and then the Tier 2 community impact grants that are more of capital projects. Next slide, please. So staff considered the projects and facilities that we have in the city and identified habitat restoration near the Park at Brisbane Mansion as something that would be a competitive project. So that property is located along SoCal Creek within the city. It is environmentally sensitive habitat area, or ESHA. It has quite a bit of ivy and other invasive plant species that affect the habitat quality and also water quality. We've done several studies over the years about what it would take to remove some of those invasive species, which is where this particular image comes from. And the project is very scalable because there is quite a bit of area that could be covered within this site. Next slide, please. So the proposed scope of this project would be to remove priority invasive species and replace them with native plants, and then also have interpretive signage in the park to speak to those actions. The work would comply with all of our environmental regulations, of course, which would include having a qualified biologist look at the plans and perhaps on monitoring on site as needed, which would all be proposed within the grant scope and covered by grant funds. Other projects we considered that are in our capital improvements program are improvements to Esplanade Park. Fortunately, we've been granted a grant by the Coastal Conservancy. Their final approval will be next Thursday morning at their bi-monthly meeting for about $275,000 to start planning of improvements of that park. So it is definitely a potential future Measure Q capital project, but at this time, we have enough funding for what we're trying to achieve. And then there's the Monterey Park Playground, which is primarily recreational in nature and has not been yet defined or really gone out for public comment, and really isn't lining up with the call for projects right now for the Measure Q grants. So right now, the Rispin project is the most eligible competitive project we have. So this grant does not require a match, and at this time, there's no fiscal impact associated with submitting the application. And if awarded, we come back to council to do any budget adjustments or scope refinement, depending on the amount awarded to the city. And there's the recommended action, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Questions?
One question, the interaction, and I don't know what the legal term we call it, but there's a group of community members that are heavily involved with the respiratory corridor and stuff like that. How does this project interact with some of their requirements with doing work in the park on those areas? Would that be just would that be an outreach that the city would do if we got the Measure Q and to make sure that we're in conformance with that legal action that was
Absolutely. There's a couple of deed restrictions on that property related to that prior litigation. And then also because we got funding from Prop 68 to do the park improvements. So there's a few different layers of regulation on those sites that we would definitely have to work through prior to doing any work.
I knew you would. I just thought if anybody in the community that really was involved in that would know that there'll be a outreach for them to make sure that's covered. Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thank you for going after this grant. That's great.
Yeah, this is great. I don't have any questions, so we can go to public comment. Hi, welcome.
I'm Carla Christensen. I am a public official, but I am speaking for myself as a citizen of Capitola. And I just want to thank you, congratulate you on the start of the park, Rispin Park. I guess we can call it that. I've heard a lot of compliments about it. I walk that area frequently, and it's very calm and beautiful, and it's got a very, very nice feel to it. Not a manicured park, but manicured enough to really allow people to enjoy it quietly. I think it's a great idea to work on other areas in the park, especially for educational and for habitat protection, but you really have to proceed cautiously on how you do it, because the city doesn't have a great, there have been some mistakes made in the past, and partially, noise, actually heedless habitat destruction, because even as wild and all the invasive plants, the ivy, eucalyptus, there's a poison oak, which is not actually native, but it is native, but it's really, they really have, the wildlife have prospered in that tangle and snarl of invasive habitat. I walked through Escalona Gulf just today, which is another monarch habitat. The monarchs were there. It was like this raucous, it was like one of those aviaries in one of the zoos. Beautiful birds just all over the place. They were attacking the berries from the English ivy. And there were birds, they were going there. There were hummingbirds going after the eucalyptus blossoms. It was just, I think this could be a carefully done, gradual, and non-invasive care to seasons, and also just not to strip it all at once. It's not going to be an instantaneous job because that would be way too destructive to the animal habitat. Other than that, I think it's a really great idea. If you have an ad hoc committee, I did do a lot of studying of the Escalona Gulch, and there are some really good monarch butterfly experts. And the only problem with that place has been the Capitola City Council, not you all, it was years ago. They made some recommendations, imposed constraints on property owners. The follow through was really inadequate, and it's sad, but there are still monarchs there, and that's sort of an indicator species. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
To hear from you.
Mhm. Welcome back.
Thank you for your comments. It seems like this is a very rich wildlife pollinator, monarch butterfly habitat. The eucalyptus trees do provide habitat for monarchs. I think we have to be careful with the word invasive. Like we're being invaded at the border. Invasive has a very negative connotation to it. I was recently in the Selva area and noticed many eucalyptus trees had been cut down. And I want to share something here because I think we're often misled. This is comments on community wildfire plan before the city council in Monterey by a Monterey resident. And she said, eucalyptus myths are promulgated in this report, which ignores the water harboring trunk of this species that creates fire breaks, such as on Angel Island, and which prevented the Oakland Hills fire from being much worse, according to fire investigators. These trees have many benefits, including pollinators, bees, monarch butterflies, birds, as well as promoting year-round homes to owls, hawks, and other birds. Eucalyptus are a species native to the Americas. Fossils have been found that are millions of years older than those found in Australia. They may even have lived here in past eons, but died during the ice ages. It is odd that European ancestry persons who predominate on the Monterey Peninsula, non-native, with many invasive and destructive habits, scapegoat onto a tree that provides such benefit. Killing eucalyptus trees would be tragic and also deny the earth of their many benefits locally. There are references on here, so I find it very questionable. Also, we hear the term restoration, which includes prescribed burning and other fuel hazard reduction measures.
Thank you.
So I'll leave you with this, but I'm just finding it questionable and problematic, and is it doing the opposite of what it's promulgated to do? And thank you to the previous speaker. So I just have one of these.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll take it back to council.
So I would make a motion to, they took the, authorize staff to submit a Tier 2 Measure Q Community Impact Grant application in the amount not to exceed $325,000 for invasive species removal, native habitat restoration, and interpretive science improving adjacent to the Rispin Mansion along Soquel Creek. And I'm doing this because, as staff mentioned in their plan, we're actually going to have a biologist review our plan, and if necessary, have a biologist on site so that we make certain that whatever we do is not going to be destructive to the monarch butterfly habitat that is in that area. So I'm pretty confident that this is going to be a well-done project with proper supervision.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. We'll jump down to 8D. This is the Housing for Health Partnership Board appointments.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just some quick background on the Housing for Health Partnership, sometimes known as the HAP. It was formed back in 2021 and serves as a federally designated continuum of care for Santa Cruz County. The group is comprised of 5 public agencies, the County of Santa Cruz and the cities of Capitola, Scotts Valley, Watsonville, and Santa Cruz. The group is governed by a policy board, which is comprised of 15 community leaders and stakeholders who represent different entities and constituencies. And Scotts Valley and Capitola share a seat, which rotates every 2 years. So it's now Capitola's turn to take a seat on the board. And so tonight we are seeking direction on the appointment for that seat. The meeting schedule is actually very convenient. It meets in Capitola's community room right across the way. Meetings are held every other month, and the next meeting is April 20th at 11 a.m. So tonight staff is recommending that the council either option A, appoint a council member to represent the city on the policy board, or option B, appoint a staff member to represent the city on the policy board. And I am going to let the city manager chime in here. I think he had some additional comments.
Well, if any council member is interested in serving, I think you should volunteer. You do have 2 council members absent, so you could certainly appoint one of them. Alternatively, if you would like to assign staff, I can nominate someone for you as well.
Thank you.
When staff serves on this committee, has there been a history of it being a public safety officer? Or has it been a regular city staff person, or how does that work?
So since this group, historically, the group was the city manager, and it was just the city managers. And we formed the new Housing for Health Partnership, as our city clerk indicated, in 2021. That's when we formed sort of this new entity. We have a seat that we share with Scotts Valley, and I ended up doing the first rotation on behalf of the city. Molly Legault succeeded me as the representative from Scotts Valley. Watsonville has a lieutenant who serves on their behalf. The city of Santa Cruz has, I believe it's 1 or 2 council members and then their lead staff person for homeless services. So it's kind of a mix. I think if we were to assign a staff person, one of the things I've learned is that based on the potential federal scoring rubric that's going to be used in coming years, having 2 public safety people on the HAP could get the region more points. It was one of the things that Dr. Ratner, who's the lead staff person with the county, mentioned. So if we were to appoint somebody, we've discussed it internally, and we do have a nominee who'd be on the public safety side.
I like points.
Well, Councilmember Clark could probably check both boxes for us.
Let's throw his name right in there.
Wouldn't it? I almost.
Do you have any
I'm sure
other
he's
questions?
watching.
Well, any public comment on this item? I don't see any. We'll bring it back to our council members who are plotting.
Well, it seems like for the council members, in all honesty, there's really only 2 people who could take this, because it is a 2-year appointment, and probably, the continuity of being able to serve for 2 years would, be a benefit to the organization and the city's participation. So, it's either, Council Member Jensen or Council Member Orbach are the two that, we could appoint. And, I haven't personally talked to Melinda about it, and I would be a little reluctant to nominate someone in all honesty. While it would be fun to nominate Joe.
Tell him we did.
I would be reluctant to nominate someone who's not here. So I guess I need to ask Councilmember Jensen if this is something he's interested in doing. And if he's not, then we probably should bring it back with some recommendation for staff to do it.
We can provide the recommendation for staff this evening, the name.
Okay.
Yeah, I think my schedule is completely full and impacted, and I would decline to sit on this just from my other obligations I have as council, and especially with RTC at this present time.
Yeah. Okay.
Staff would recommend Captain Moreno for the position.
Perfect.
Okay.
So I'm just looking for a motion and a vote to confirm the appointment.
Thanks, Julia. All right.
You want to make a motion?
Susan, you're on a roll tonight, and I just have to say a second, so go ahead. Yeah. Go 100%, Susan.
So I will make a motion that we appoint Captain Moreno, is that correct, to serve as our representative on this board.
I'll second.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Last item of General Gov, Finance Committee Advisory. Wow, I just totally switched all those words. Finance Advisory Committee composition. This is item 8E. Review our appointments on the FAC.
Great. Thank you so much. Once again, good evening, Mayor and Council. So a very brief item this evening to go over the composition of the FAC, the Finance Advisory Committee. As a refresher, the FAC is composed of 7 or 8 members, the mayor, the vice mayor, 3 at-large members appointed by the council, and 1 or 2 business representatives recommended by the Chamber of Commerce and then appointed by the council. The bylaws state that if the mayor or vice mayor do not wish to serve, another council member can replace them. So the last time the council reorganized and appointed a new mayor and vice mayor was in December of last year. And so with that, we just want to review the mayor and vice mayor appointments on the FAC to make sure that those serving want to continue to serve, or if the mayor or vice mayor would like to serve, they're given the opportunity to. So on the screen, you'll see the current composition. So Mayor Morgan's already sitting on the FAC, and we have Councilmember Westman, who's now currently participating on the FAC, and then the other members. So if the council's comfortable with the current composition, no action is needed. If the council wishes to make a change, now's the time. We would just ask for a motion and a vote to make that change. So with that, this evening, the recommended action is staff recommends reviewing the composition to either affirm the current composition or make a motion to change the composition to reflect the current mayor and vice mayor.
I'm totally fine with if Councilmember Westman wants to continue to serve on the FAC. That's totally fine with me.
It's totally fine with me if you want to take it, but I'm happy to continue if you don't want to.
Thank you.
I will continue. Any public comment? Seeing none, so no motion needed. We're going to stay the course.
If there's no action being taken, I will just note it in the minutes.
Lovely. Thank you. All right. Great work, everybody. Item 9 is adjournment. We'll see you at the next regularly scheduled meeting. Take care of yourself and others. Appreciate you being here.